Let's get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this beautiful world of ours. And welcome today to our Patients as Research Partners webinar. I'm just thrilled that you are here joining us, that we have this esteemed group of speakers and so much to cover today and questions that have been submitted by you. So thank you for that. I want to say thanks first to our partner Novartis, who is supporting this educational material. We thank them so much for making it possible. So first, what we want to do is make sure that you have access to translation if you need it. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm flying solo today. My usual people are all on webinars. What I want to do is just make sure that you have the link to get into this session. So what you'll do is you scan the QR code or tap the attendee link. And Ruth, can you see apps on your control board?
Not sure. I see Wordly as an option on the right
Okay,
top.
we're trying to share this link right here. That is attend.wordly.ai/. I don't have the option to share it, but this is the link people should use to join. Or you can scan it on your phone.
Can you project it so people see it better?
Yeah, usually I'm able to click it and put it in the chat.
Okay.
I'll give you a second.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I wish that I could copy it. And then you'll click the language that you'd like, and you can either read or listen to the translation after you choose attend. Okay. So we are your speakers today. I am your moderator. My name is Kristen Willard, and I am with GAP. I'm the Vice President of Education at GAP, and we have just an amazing lineup today for you. What we'll be doing is representing the different perspectives, the patient and caregiver perspective, the researcher perspective, and then the healthcare professional perspective as we talk today. And so let me give you the backgrounds of each of our esteemed speakers. So Dr. Tina Mesaric is Director and Technical Manager of Atopica. That's a nonprofit organization that addresses the needs of patients with atopic dermatitis and their families. She has a Bachelor of Biology from the University of Ljubljana. She completed her doctoral program of neuroscience at the Faculty of Electrical Engineering and Biotechnical Faculty. That is difficult to say. I can't imagine doing it, Tina. At the University of Ljubljana. In her doctoral thesis, she researched the toxicity of nanomaterials. She's here today to share the patient and caregiver perspective on research participation. So thank you for being here, Tina. We then have Dr. Tal-Singer. Dr. Ruth Tal-Singer is a patient advocate and clinical research scientist with more than 30 years of research and development experience. She started her career in healthcare as a critical care nurse. She obtained her doctorate in molecular virology at the University of Pennsylvania and then spent almost 23 years in industry working on the development of medicines for infectious diseases and lung diseases. In 2019, she then joined the nonprofit sector, first as president and CEO of the US-based COPD Foundation, where she and I work together, and since 2023 as the chief scientific officer at GAP. In 2025, she was elected as a fellow of the American Thoracic Society for her contributions to the field. So congratulations on that, Ruth. Dr. Tal-Singer is here to represent the researcher perspective. And last, but certainly not least, Dr. Bartolome Celli, or Bart, is one of the world's leading experts in the area of pulmonary medicine with a particular emphasis on COPD, or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Dr. Celli currently serves as professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School and director of the COPD Center at Brigham and Women's Hospital, and that's in Boston, Massachusetts, in the US. He is a prolific scholar who has authored more than 280 peer-reviewed articles, more than 350 scientific abstracts, and several books related to COPD. His research has been featured in highly prestigious journals, including the New England Journal of Medicine, and he also serves as a reviewer for medical journals such as the New England Journal and The Lancet, the Annals of Internal Medicine, and others. And he is here to speak to the healthcare professional perspectives. So please, thank you in joining this wonderful panel of friends and colleagues today. Thank you all for being here. So I will start. Here's what you can expect today. As we start, I will speak a little bit to the roles that patients and their families can take in research and benefits too to being part of the research process. So you'll hear the perspectives of the three speakers from their vantage in the research landscape. Even though they all wear more than one hat, and I know that well, they'll be speaking to one vantage point. And I want to say that while we're talking, be sure to add your questions or comments to the chat or Q&A, and I will be able to check those as we move through. So let's start here about roles. When we talk about patient engagement in research, we're talking about much more than just enrolling in a project or a study. Patients and their families can be involved, and we encourage them to be involved at really any time point through the life cycle of a research project and in many roles. So let's talk first about the advisors and steering committee members. So this is serving on committees that help advise from your personal experience and then from the community experiences of the community you represent. You, as a patient, have a better understanding of your condition than almost anyone, right? You know your body the best. You understand your experience, or it could be a loved one's experiences the best. And by serving as advisory or steering committee members, you can help then shape the focus of the work, ensure that the people who are designing and executing this work understand it, understand that experience, and that the research reflects what truly matters to you. So that's an important, very important role that you can take. Another is there in the center box at the top, co-designers and creators. And what we mean by that is patients and their families directly collaborate in developing the research protocols so they could help in designing interventions or really what we're saying there is what happens in a study and the materials that are used in that study. This is incredibly important because we want to ensure that the patient voice is represented at the start of the research, right? Not just later on whenever the results are ready, but at the beginning when they can really influence the entire process and the outcomes. So we encourage people to be involved at that time point, and for any partners that are on the phone to make sure that you are involving people early on in the process, which I think all my colleagues would agree with. Do not wait until the end to involve people. Make sure that they're involved from the start. Being a reviewer, this is one of my favorite roles in research, is one of the most fun things to do. It's reviewing research materials. So when I say that, think about recruitment flyers or recruitment emails, consent forms. It could be the lay summary, the survey questions. This is a really crucial way to help make sure that the language will speak to people who have experiences like you, so your peers, or to families of patients like you. It helps to make sure that it's culturally appropriate so that it speaks to others where you live or in countries or regions that are similar to where you live. And truly, one of the biggest things at GAP that it's meaningful for is to make sure that the translations are meaningful. Oftentimes, translations, AI is wonderful. We have all embraced it to some extent, but translations is one area that does not knock it out of the park, as we say. So we want to make sure that people review those to make sure that the translations say what they should. Another thing here on the bottom left is participants. And so when I say participants, I mean participating in the traditional way that you'd think. So that's engaging in a study, responding to a survey, and it could be enrolling in a clinical study, or other ways. I think it's important to remember that without participants, there would be no new medications or devices. Nothing would exist because patients are central to that result, to that experience. There would also be no understanding of related health conditions or of mental health comorbidities or of emotional health and quality of life. We need people reporting their experiences to have any of these data. So these are really crucial roles. Two more examples, presenters and authors. So if you are a person who enjoys being part of the knowledge sharing and writing experience and reviewing experience, participating in webinars like this, or presenting at conferences, it's really important to have the patient voice represented. It's really crucial, and to help ensure that the results are meaningful to the larger community. And lastly, just as an example, serving as an advocate and as an ambassador, many A's. These are other roles that are extremely important, because what this helps us to do is to disseminate the information, right? Help connect your peers to research, help them to understand what the research process looks like and if it might be a good fit for them if they are interested. Help them to understand what trusted institutions look like, because not everything on the web, of course, can be trusted. So without all of these roles, the most important part of the equation is missing. Without you serving in these roles, patients and families, your voices are missing. And that's why it's really important to take part in some of these or all of these roles if you're so inclined. This next slide, I want to be clear that these are not all the benefits of participation in the research process, but I just want to highlight a few of these before we talk to our panelists. We want to make sure that research reflects the experiences of impacted individuals, and you can do this. The benefits of participation is that the voice of real patients and real families is heard. This is not the researchers or healthcare professionals thinking what they know their family's experience or surmising it from the different conversations they've had. This is real patients and families representing their reality. Another benefit, this improves study design and materials. Other families, just like you, are going to be more likely to appreciate these materials and to understand them if you have touched them. They're more likely to be patient friendly if you have touched them. And I want to say that this effect can be seen down the line. This is not just relevant to the study materials. The effects are seen down the line in that we get better data if people understand the materials, and better data results in better outcomes and better impacts for the patient and family community down the line. Next up in the middle, when patients feel seen and feel valued, this builds trust in our research process, in everyone that's involved in the research process. And this also results in increased and optimal outcomes down the line as well. I think having trust is one of the biggest elements of importance in the research process. People must trust their providers. They must trust the patients that are connecting them to research, or the institutions like GAP that connect them to research. And of course, the researchers themselves, the process, and the data that result from that. And I know we'll talk more about that today. Next, another benefit, this helps to ensure that outcomes are meaningful to the community. As we said, patients help to communicate results in a meaningful way that really speaks to the community in words that they understand and that mean something to them, and also make sure that the results reach those people. So really think about what an unbelievable impact that can have, that you as a patient can connect individuals and a whole community to these important opportunities and to the outcomes they represent. And lastly, this increases the impact of results. Patients being partners in research increases the impact. And by that, I mean the data can help lead to patient-centered, patient-focused, patient-centered. It's what we're all about here. Centered change or care improvement, and that is what we want to see. So, in summary, for all of these, there are so many roles that you can play as part of the research process. And all of those roles are important because they result in these outcomes. They make the work more meaningful and they speak to the people that research is about. So, thank you for listening to that introduction. We'll now move to our conversations with our panelists. I'm going to stop my share. And first up, we have Tina here to represent the the patient and family perspective, even though Tina wears many hats and has worked in research herself before at her organization. So, Tina, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're lucky that you are here with us today. So, let me ask you the first question. Why do you personally, in this role, think that it's important that patients and parents or caregivers be involved in research? What would you say?
So, of course, I personally believe it's absolutely essential that patient and caregivers, sorry, I have my dog is really trying to be a part of this
Oh, it's
meeting.
fine, Tina, but if you know us, by the end of this, Ruth and I will be asking you to introduce your dog. So please do not apologize.
Okay. So yes, as you said, Kristen, I absolutely believe it is essential that patient and caregivers are involved in the researchers because it directly concerns us patients. And the disease shapes our life, it shapes our health and all of our daily challenges. So we live with this condition every day. We know it very well, we understand it. So it is really important that we are included. And if decisions are made without the voices of the people who actually live with the disease, crucial perspective will be missing. So researchers and doctors, they may understand the medical aspects, which is of course the crucial thing, but they cannot fully grasp the day-to-day struggles that we are facing as patients and also as caregivers. So how the disease affect us? How the disease affect our daily life, our work life, family life, school life, mental well-being? It has such a big effect on the patient life. So without our input, research can easily focus on outcomes that look very good on paper, but it doesn't maybe truly reflect that what the patient need in everyday life. So for example, I am a patient with atopic eczema and a caregiver with of a child. We have, for example, a lot of questionnaires regarding the quality of life, the disease, how to affect the quality of life of the patient. But with the majority of these questionnaires, when they were co-design structure, the patients were not included. So of course the data have information that the doctors need, but it's not maybe what patients would feel and would need to tell the doctor how the disease affect them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, what is also important is, as you already said, that the patients are involved from the early stages on. Usually when patients are involved are only involved at the last stage, which is something that it would be better to that we can change that.
Mm-hmm.
So early involvement helps ensure that research focus on the right questions and address the real needs of patients. So uh, and for example, also like a question that usually we don't think about, like the way of treatment is being administered to the patient, it is important. So do they take the medicine orally? Do they take it topically? So, or maybe it is the medicine injectable. So it's also important that patients are included from all um, um, aspects. So they do give their contribution. Um, so one maybe what is also important is that when patients are involved in the research, it builds trust. People are more likely to participate in the studies and accept new treatments if they really feel that their voices are heard and that the research reflects what their real needs are.
Yeah, I love this. There's so much in what you said, but making sure that your voice is heard, it improves the trust, and I think that point is very important. I think no matter the role that you have here on this call as an attendee or a panelist, patients need to be involved from the beginning, right? To get the best benefit for everyone involved. So, Tina, in your experience, how do patients and caregivers generally become involved in research?
So usually, many are invited probably through hospitals and medical clinics. Of course, the medical healthcare professionals are the ones that usually recruit the patients for their studies because they're the ones who are usually making the studies. And so they do play a key role in explaining why participation matters and how to also help the families to explain why it is important to be involved in the studies. Second, patient organizations are being much more important in this regard also because patient can contact directly patient organization that focus on their disease or their condition, and they see if there are any kind of researchers opportunities or there are some available projects they can join. And these organizations are also often share trust research opportunities on social media, newsletters. So it's also important to maybe to sign up for the newsletter, to check the organization that patients do find trustworthy and relevant. And as patient that leads a nonprofit organization, sometimes we do have to create also our own opportunities, which is very important, I believe, because we are advocating for patient, and of course, patient stories are always very important. But at one point, we need data that we can advocate for. So, for example, if I may just share a short experience in Slovenia when we did a very important study regarding the quality of life with the patient atopic eczema, and we partnered with University Clinical Center Maribor and North Norway Hospital in Norway. And we did a study. We did a very a questionnaire that reflected the quality of life of patients, and the patients were actually included from the early phase on, and they were conducting all the questionnaire and but also the researchers. But that was very important because in such a small country, we are only 2 million people, we got almost 1,000 responses. So anybody that did some kind of study, they know that is very big deal. So when we have a community that are really underserved, they really do feel that they want to connect, that they want to contribute to the research. So we finally got data and we can advocate. And data is critical. It is very important that we can build on advocacy, especially when we want to influence healthcare policy and improve patient care. Yeah.
Beautiful. No, that's fantastic. I love that take charge attitude. Just making research happen if it's not coming to you, right? Making it happen. And you saw also as another point, you saw Ruth smiling when we were talking about newsletters because she is a big believer in that dissemination route and has her own research newsletter at GAP. So beautiful, beautiful points. Thanks, Tina. So I know that you'll be able to speak to this very well too, with all your different hats, but what are some of the positives that you find about being involved in research? What do you think as a patient and parent?
So of course there are many positive aspects of being involved in research. So maybe first, which is usually overlooked, but patients often feel empowered. Instead of being like a passive recipient of care and treatment, patients can become active contributors who can influence the direction of research and also future treatments. And it gives them also some kind of sense of purpose controlling situation where the disease itself can often make us feel powerless. The second thing, what is also important is when patient and caregivers involve in the studies, they also get a higher understanding of what the disease is, what are the treatment options, what new development is happening, and also what is, I think, when they got involved in the researcher, there is connection between researchers and the medical community. So there is higher trust also that is growing from this kind of collaborations. So yeah, we can also use the results. What is important that, of course, that we can use the results to improve awareness of our condition, our own condition, and the impact it has on our own life. So, including our preferences for treatment, for example. So, researchers give us credible data we can share with our healthcare professional, policymakers, and public. But we can say, okay, so we were involved in this. So this is my own my perspective, but also in the study that I was included in, it shows this and this. So it somehow it gives you higher credibility and important that that you get important view of also how to say advocating for your own health.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very important. That's a good point.
I think, yeah. So yeah, this is, I think, very important for advocacy to gain the data we need for our health and also for the community of the patients. So finally, maybe involvement in research strength and the relationship, what I already said with the patient and researchers. So when the patients see that their voice also matter and that they're experts and their voice is also important and that experts also listen to them, it's really built the trust. So I think this human to human relationship and building the trust, I think, is the key. So that part is, I believe, very, very important. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that too, wholeheartedly, having worked on both sides of this. I believe it makes a big difference. We have a comment in the chat that I just wanted to share with you. Let me see if I can pull it up. It says, I think it's very important for meaningful involvement and engaging of the patient in the whole research study. But the only time we get involved is during the filling out of the questionnaire. After that, you don't get to know the findings and the end result of the research itself. This is a really important point. Um, and I think everybody's nodding on the phone. We are all believers in involving people earlier on and then not abandoning your participants, right? Making sure that your patients and family members who participated understand what happened after they left you, whether it was a survey or an advisory board or a clinical trial, understanding what those results look like and then what's going to happen next, right? That's also important.
I
So
agree.
Tina, we have about 2 more minutes, and I'm sorry, but I want to ask you this last question. What are your tips or takeaways from specifically being a part of surveys and advisory boards? I know you've done a lot of that.
So yeah, I mean, I did a lot of that, and it's very important because I get invited to contribute to research projects and study designs. So this give us the opportunity to actually directly, as you already said, directly influence how the research is conducted, what is important for the patient, what is not important for the patient. So this is something that I really am grateful actually that I have this opportunity, especially regarding also how to say off my random. So anything that is actually being done, we can be also included. So
Yep.
even with the scientific articles, we can get included, especially. So that's very, very important that we can get involved in this case. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely agree. Anything else you want to say in closing before we move on?
Um,
And then we'll have Q&A later.
Yeah, just maybe that just the key message that for the patient that it is important to get involved, that we shouldn't look in this that somebody else will do it. We just need to get involved. Every voice is very important. And Sometimes opportunity will not just show up in our inbox. So it's just important to get active, to get to ask questions. It's never too much to get involved. And also from the medical community, it is important that patients, of course, are respective. I love that comment because it's very important that if the patients are included, they need to feel respected. They need to be included from early age on, and from to every step, to understand what are they included, why they are included. So they need to know all the process that they are included in the research or any kind of project with the medical community.
Beautiful. And we've all seen that, I think everyone on this call, when patients are included as really as partners in the process at every step of the way, it's really a beautiful thing to behold, right? Everything is better when the voices are included. So thank you so much, Tina, and we'll return to you in just a little
Thank you.
bit. I'm going to move now to Ruth, who's going to be representing the perspective of the researcher, and then we will move to you, Bart. So stay with us. Ruth, I'm going to pull up your slides, okay?
Okay, thank you. So we're talking about my favorite topic.
Other than animals, right?
Yes, other than animals.
All right, here we go.
Okay, so we are talking about the role of patients in research. And the first question is, what are research studies? And if we go to the next slide, I think it's important that we understand that when people think about research, they think about clinical trials, but there's a lot more that you can do. And I think Tina mentioned it very nicely to add your voice to our understanding of disease. So on the left are interventional studies. Those are the ones that test drugs, either pills or inhalers or patches or creams. They test medical devices like oxygen monitors. They test pulmonary rehabilitation as a treatment or a care delivery path. But these are often placebo controlled. And I'll explain a little bit about what placebo is. But it's very, very important to understand that in some of these studies, the normal treatment is stopped, and in other studies, you could stay on your normal medication. On the right are observational studies. They look at health or other outcomes over time. There's no change in anything that you do. You just keep living your life, and it could be even a survey that you take once or a blood sample that you give for research of biomarkers or review of your health records, but it's not something that an individual has to change anything that they're doing in their normal treatment of their condition. So the next slide shows an example of very large disease understanding or observational studies that I've had the fortune to be involved in COPD and in asthma, because these studies led to new treatments for lung diseases. It's really important to show that international collaborations actually made a difference in the treatment. And Dr. Celli and I have been involved in 4 of these together. And I'm thinking about the ECLIPSE study, for example, in orange on the left. That study 20 years ago is still contributing to publications. And hearing what Tina said and the comment that was online, one thing, Bart, that we didn't do is actually have an infographic or a late-term summary of how ECLIPSE changed the way we understand COPD and the way we treat COPD. So eosinophilic COPD is an example, but Bart, I don't know if we should take the action to actually produce a late-term summary for the people who contributed 20 years ago. 2005 is when we started the study. So that is a point that is really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so this is something we should do. If we go to the next question, important elements of research. That was a question from Kristen. But it's one thing to understand that anybody that is involved in researching anything in humans has to be trained What we're mentioning here is a declaration of Helsinki. There are guidelines around the world to make sure that people are safe and that they understand and consent to the study. So that is very important that everybody that participates in research is trained for human subject research. On the next slide is the consent piece. And I think this is the most important lesson, that when you participate in the study, it is a voluntary contribution. You get to agree to do it. You have to understand what the research is all about, not just something that you just jump in and do. Any changes you have to be informed on what are the risks of the studies and what are the benefit of the studies. So the informed consent is applicable to any research, even if it is a survey, to understand why you're doing it and what is included in it. You can always take out your consent in a trial, because it is completely up to you whether you want to participate or not. So now we're going to talk about the elements of research. And there are a lot of elements to conducting the research. And the first thing is to understand what the question is. The second thing is to design a study or a survey or any other protocol that tells you, can I answer these questions? So making sure the design is good. New treatments, medicines, or devices or treatment approaches require submission to a regulatory authority. In the United States, it's the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. In Europe, there are regulatory authorities, and in each country, you have to submit any new study to make sure that it is safe to do. The next element is to submit to an ethics committee. And that is a committee that includes individuals who are researchers, doctors, but also lay people that say this research is qualified, is the study necessary, and are people safe enough, and would data privacy be protected. The next piece is actually doing the study, recruitment, and I think Tina mentioned sometimes you can be proactive and look for a study or a survey or something you can participate in. Next bullet is when the study is completed, it is published. That is a requirement from ethics committees as well, and we always share what we find in the study, whether it proves our idea or disproves it. And the last bullet is the one that the question was about. Just because you participate in the study, Kristen, one more click, please, is the late term summary and the infographic, and telling patients and participants what the results of the study is. Next, please.
Sorry, I could not get it to come up.
That's okay. So I always quote my mentor and collaborator, John Walsh, who was the founder of the Alpha One Foundation, the COPD Foundation. Nothing about us without us. That is so important. And you heard it from Tina and you heard it from Kristen. If without participants in trials and in surveys, we wouldn't know, we wouldn't understand the disease, and we wouldn't have new treatments. Next. So how do we capture the patient or the caregiver voice in research? The design has to be based on how we understand the disease. That's how we define the question of, and I mentioned all these studies that contributed to disease understanding. The digital tools that we have today, like what we're using right now, allow us to send questionnaires using apps, and using different sensors like the watch or any activity monitor that tells us how people move or how they feel. At the end of the study, it's really important to ask participants, how did it work? What do you think? What do you feel? And I think Tina mentioned it. Sometimes we don't consider the patient perspective. So it is important to make sure that we do surveys and focus groups to really understand the patient and caregiver perspective. And electronic health records, a lot of us right now have digital data that we don't really need to be in a study. We just need to agree to share the data with researchers to help group the information and understand the disease better. Next, please. So it is important, and I quote Albert Einstein, is to make sure that we need to listen to the person who has the questions. Sometimes we think we know what the questions is, but sometimes it's the patients and the caregivers that tell us, maybe you should ask something else. So we invest a lot of effort in training patients and caregivers to be active research partners because it's important that you raise your own experience with the disease. You are the expert on the disease, but also think about the training that is needed to represent the community of people like you. So it's not always what is important just to you, but how do you represent your entire community? So the idea that you can be on advisory boards and bring your voice up and making sure that the patient is considered, for example, when we design clinical trials, if we have 20 visits, could they be on the phone instead of coming to a clinic? So that is where patients actually are important in saying, this looks like a crazy day of too many assessments. How do we make it easier for patients? Looking at documents and looking that people actually understand the trials or the studies. So it is a very valuable information to have patients and caregivers a part of a plan. Next, please. So as I mentioned, contributing the research question, and I think that's something Kristen already covered, making sure that we understand who participates in the study. Does it represent my community in my country? When we look at the design of a study, looking at protocols and study materials to say, actually, this could be offensive in my culture, making sure that the documents or the advertisements that are included in the study are appropriate for the country or the culture that we're submitting the materials to. They can participate, telling people that they know if a study looks interesting, sharing it. And Tina mentioned, as patient advocates, we share it with our community to make sure people know the studies are around, being a part of the study, participating in the data collection. And Tina made an important point that is really, really critical, is participating in the publication and the communication of the results of the studies. Next, please. So diversity is something that we hear a lot about, but what we know from our experience in the real world, that sometimes medicines that are approved don't work for everyone. Medicines are not one size fits all, and there have been a lot of occasions where trials were conducted in a population that didn't represent everybody with a condition, and so the conclusions or side effects, for example, were not seen until the product was launched. So the way we improve diversity is making sure that we can decentralize study, making it a lot easy for some populations to participate because if they live in a rural area, they can't drive 60 or 100 kilometers or miles to get to a clinic. So it makes it a more diverse study if we allow patients who live far away to participate. Real world studies looking at computer data records allow more people to be included, making sure there's a diverse population when we answer a question, and improving the education of patients and caregivers on how important it is to participate in trials or in surveys or in research is important. So we're not asking the people who are the most educated and more computer savvy to participate in studies. So we're working really hard on pictograms, on ways that we can help people with different languages and different reading ability to participate in studies. So why should I participate as a patient and a research partner? A lot of times I hear comments that people are concerned about being on placebo. And something that the industry that developed medicine heard was this concern. So one, during the study, if one is on a placebo arm, they don't know this is an inactive treatment. They don't know what they're on, but their safety is followed to make sure they're okay being on placebo. And a lot of the trials, especially the late stage ones before a product is launched, include extensions that allow everyone who participated in the study to be on the active drug. So if we think that the active drug is going to help you, one would have an opportunity, a participant in the study who was on placebo, to continue on an active drug. That is really, really important. And people really struggle with the idea that a trial may not help them. Maybe their disease is too advanced, maybe they're not feeling like it's going to make a difference and they just want to deal with their condition and keep on living. Their contribution could really help other people. And it is important to think about, can I contribute to other patients by being in the study? And that makes me feel good to know that I've been a part of improving healthcare for a lot of patients. The other thing that I hear from trial participants is that it allows them to develop a closer relationship with their doctor because they're seen more time. Usually we see our doctor every 6 months to a year, but by being in a clinical trial, you get followed more closely. So it is a nice relationship to be a part of a team that contributes to better health. So I think Tina mentioned the empowerment, being heard, being able to influence how your treatment's going to be affected. And with the late-term summary, also gaining the understanding and the knowledge that comes out of research is a benefit to participants.
And Ruth, we have about 1 more minute left. So
Okay.
let me know if there's something you want to focus on specifically.
Yeah, this is, I think, the last piece is how do we find it? So GAP and other patient advocacy groups are participating in recruitment for trials. We do have a lot of information on how to find a trial. We run a lot of surveys, so just following our websites of patient advocacy groups and newsletters could help you find a study, but you can also search in clinicaltrials.gov or registry to find studies in your area. I think that was my last point.
Thank you so much. And if you have any questions or want to reach out to the research group, here is their email, as well as Ruth has recorded several podcasts that can be found here that are on the finer details of research and patient involvement. So thank you so much. Let me remove that share. Okay, great. There we go. There we go. Back again. Now I can see you, Dr. Celli. Welcome, Bart.
Thank you very much, Kristen. Here I am.
Welcome, and thank you for representing the healthcare professional perspective. I know you have different hats as well, but tell us a little bit about how you view the role of the HCP in supporting and referring patient partners to research.
Absolutely. First of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to participate, to Ruth for all the years we've shared in this endeavor, and to Tina for providing some guidance at the beginning of what is needed. And I'll start with a word that was mentioned many times, partnership. I call patient sounds a little more like a passive subject, whereas partners in health is indeed what we are. We're trying to promote a healthy lifestyle for any person who sees a healthcare practitioner. And the first responsibility of a healthcare practitioner is to think about the person who's sitting in front of him or her. In that sense, I think the first obligation is to know the field that you're working in, to see what is the cutting edge and what can be learned to promote health. And in that sense, the person who's really most of the time sees the patient is either a nurse, a respiratory therapist, or very frequently a doctor. The second word that I heard that I think is crucial is that of trust. And that develops over time if the person who is seeing the healthcare provider feels that he or she is seeing a friend who cares for that person. And in that locking endeavor, you end up with individuals who are willing to participate in anything that one of us promotes. And I have that from my own experience. I'll share two stories. The first one is 1796. None of us were born. And Edward Jenner in England vaccinated an 8-year-old boy called James Phipps with the first variola vaccine taken from cowpox, a disease that was seen in the breast of cows, and which he, having observed women who worked milking the cows who did not get smallpox, thought that could be transferred to a human subject and be able to be vaccinated against the very killing disease smallpox.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I mention this? In order for him to vaccinate an 8-year-old boy, the mom of the boy, I am sure, had to in some way give consent. Maybe it wasn't written at that time, but had to be a participant. Not only I think is important that story from the point of view of what we have just told you, but also because he wrote a paper on that case and it was rejected by the publisher. So neither the paper come out nor did the family find out until neighbors decided that given the example on the little boy, which was then given injections of smallpox and never caught the disease, they decided to participate. And 14 more subjects were vaccinated along this very rudimentary vaccination line. And then the paper was accepted and it promoted now smallpox as a disease that could be prevented. And this resulted in total prevention of smallpox and eradication from the world in 1980. So I think this story synthesizes what I've been talking about. I like the 5P word, partnership, number one, and the healthcare provider is an important person. Participation, and this has been driven very strongly by both Tina and Ruth. Protocol, the person who participates need to understand what he or she is getting into. And that is part of the healthcare provider. You become a partner of that person in the whole process, not just in recruiting and having signed the informed consent, but be available for any problem, any report throughout the process. Publication, and in that sense, it is extremely important because I believe most participants usually do not participate in the publication. But what they do participate, and it is your obligation as a healthcare provider, is in giving them a result of what they have done. Even if it's in plain words, I used to meet with my patients that I sent in for research and say, look, what we have found is this, that, the other thing. We thank you for your contribution. I wish I had put a picture of one of the trials that we did, which was by the company that Ruth used to work in. It was the TORCH trial. And I put 21 patients. And at the end of the trial, we had a party, a cake, and I gave him a public presentation of 3 or 4 slides of what was found in that particular study. And finally, I believe promotion becomes central to patients' activities. And I will tell you the story of HIV.
Mm-hmm.
HIV was a mortal disease that I lived through. I used to do bronchoscopies and I would soothe myself from head to toes. My wife would wash the clothes when I got home. And I had the fear that I was going to catch it because we didn't know exactly how it was being transmitted. The persons who suffer from the disease and their relatives became very vocal. And if you're all very young ladies, so you probably don't remember very well, but I do remember very well this very strong advocacy by the groups that resulted in medications that make HIV now a curable disease and one that is not killing that many people, even in the countries where it is rampant. So those 5 Ps should be followed very simply, and it is, I think, our main responsibility, healthcare providers, all 4 of us in here, to make sure that we fulfill all those elements in this partnership for health. In a personal story, I will conclude with that. I was once with patients with the disease that Ruth knows very well, COPD. I used to work at a veterans hospital. I was the division chief of pulmonary in the VA hospital in Boston. And making rounds, this patient noted to me that many of them got very short of breath when using their arms, where they were able to rehab with the legs pretty well. But anytime they washed their hair or even when they ate, they became very short of breath. That's observation that was very unique. I took to the literature and there was very little that was reported. So I recruited a bunch of patients at the hospitals with severe COPD, and I did a series of studies using upper extremity exercise with a board and some rings into some pecs. It was a very interesting study that showed for the first time that if you use your arms to do voluntary maneuvers, you inhibit the synchrony between your desire to breathe and your diaphragmatic contractions, and you become very short of breath. And that became part of the rehab program where everybody now does upper extremity exercise. This study was published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 1976, and it all came from a patient telling me what she was feeling. She was the wife of a veteran who came to my clinic and said, my husband, every time that he goes and washes the hair or shaves, he gets extremely short of breath. So being attentive to how patients or persons feel, what their problems may be, may generate questions. And then the rest of what both Ruth and Tina spoke about, I think, form the center of what we're trying to convey today. The 5 Ps: partnership, participation, protocol, publication, and promotion are all elements that I think will help us push the field even further. So I'll stop here.
Oh, that is
And then
beautiful. The 5 Ps, we'll have to use that in a summary of the meeting.
absolutely.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Um, I'm going to ask you a question. We actually won't have time for Q&A, but I'll send some of the questions that I received out to the group just to see if you'd like to answer them. And then I can send them back to the people who posed them. But I want to ask a question of you, Bart. Do you encourage patients to, if their HCPs are not talking to them about research, do you encourage them to ask? Is it okay for a patient to ask their
Absolutely.
provider?
Absolutely. Is there anything new that is being researched on about the disease or the problem that I have? I think that should be a question. I believe it's your right. And then if you can, I must assure you that most studies, and I want everybody who's listening that are planned, are safe because society has built hurdles to make them happen that try to guarantee that the person who enrolls is safe. So to me, no question that is something that has to be brought up by the patient and sometimes the family. I remember chatting with you about your desire to know more about your family's problems when they were sick. And sometimes we feel silent in front of the healthcare provider, but we should participate.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I knew the answer. I knew what you would say to that. So that was planted because we all believe that, right? We all believe you
Absolutely.
should ask. Okay, in closing, there is just a request from the community, from the people on the line. Can you please repeat the 5 Ps and that will be how we end?
Yes, partnership. And you know exactly what it is. Participation, both as an active inquirer and as a participant in the studies. Protocol, make sure you understand what is being told you. Publication, what were the results? And then promotion, try to be an active promoter of whatever helps us lead to better health.
Beautiful. I think that's just a perfect place to close. So I want to say thank you to everyone who is on the line today attending. Thank you to our doctors Mesaric, to Tal-Singer, Dr. Celli, all here today. What a beautiful, beautiful conversation. Thank you again to Novartis for their support of this initiative. And we will have this up online on our YouTube page recorded. Thank you so much. Just beautiful. Have a great day, everybody.
And
Thank
thank you for
you.
organizing it.
Yes,
Happy
thank you so
holidays
much
to
for having
everyone.
us.
Bye.
Bye-bye.